So here we are today, and we're going to be going over our ball bounce again, but this time we're going to be layering on one more layer of complexity, and that is squash and stretch. And we're going to starting to add in character as well. So here we are. We have our scene. We have our ball. Here's our little obstacle course that we're going to run them through. First thing I want to do is I want to set a quick selection set, which I already did here, but I'll walk you through how to do that. First I'm going to select the bottom squash and stretch, the top squash and stretch, the middle one, holding down shift the whole time, and then the translation. I'm going to go under create, sets, a quick selection set, and then I'm going to say add to shelf. I'm going to name it and say add to shelf. It will pop up here as a little mill script, and then I just have to click that and I select everything. Second of all, I want to plan out what I'm going to do, because without a plan you don't know where to go. So here was my plan. So it's a little messy up here to begin with, but in my mind it works for me, and it only really needs to work for you. Right here, basically I have him squash down for anticipation, stretches out, jumps, goes into a couple small bounces. Every time I change color, it's a change of direction essentially. Comes over to the edge. At this point he squashes down, jumps back a couple times, and then takes kind of a running start and little bounce for the green, big one, down to this piece of I guess the diving board point, and I want it to compress like a diving board and shoot him off into the air. Have him roll down this ramp, shoot off the ramp, and come into here and bounce all the way down into rest. So that's my plan. So let's see if we can't execute said plan. So first thing, let's go into our preferences, animation. I'm going to make it flat and stepped. Cool. And everything is going to be from our side view. First thing, set a key at frame 100. Key is set on everything. Next, let's bring him up to where we want to start, which would be right here. Now I'm going to move in and just make sure he's on that platform. Okay, key set first, so let's start it into our animation. First we want him to squish down to anticipate. I'm going to go with 4 frames. Select the whole ball, hit a key, and we squish him down. So he's going to squish pretty quick. I'm going to keep him there for maybe another 4 frames. Again, I'm just kind of guessing, and we'll retime it as we go. Squishes down, maybe we squish him just a little bit more. And I made one mistake. We're going to make sure we turn on our ball rotate. There we go. I'm going to make a new selection set. Now, since I didn't set any keys on our rotate, I'm going to go back to my current keys. Just set a key, and set a key. I want to rotate just a little bit. And I'm going to use my little trick with that little rotation. Again, rotations basically tend to come last, but this is a little bit part of my jumping. There we go. Because we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The same height as he was prior. So copy and paste those values, and we're good to go there. next bounce. It's just, all I'm doing is doing a rough block in of my apexes. So if you look in my planning, I have two little bounces in the red. 1, 2, 2. So my goal was to get them to the end. I didn't quite get them where I wanted them, so we're going to just adjust a few things here. There we go. So far I have not put in any stretch, as you see. We'll layer that in just a little bit later. Now he's here. Squish a little bit, then bounce back a few times before he gets the running start. So let's hold him for about 8 frames. Maybe that's too much, maybe that's not enough. I don't know yet, but we'll find out later. So 1, 2, 3, little bit of a roll. Now that we're here, I'm going to have them stall for a moment. I'm going to roll back a little for anticipation, and then running start. So the green is roll. It's kind of like bounce, bounce, big jump. Hold for 8. Do a 4 frame little whoop, little anticipation, just a little. So I'm going to build contrast between these two small ones and the big one. So I want the small ones to be somewhat similar in size before we get to our nice big payoff. Before we go even further, we're going to start talking about squash and stretch, both, and not just the squish part. So when we deal with squash and stretch, we want, like in the drawing, let me show you, we want a contact frame, a squish frame, and then him off, right like we see here. So in most instances, you're going to have 2 contact frames and then the one off. If you remember in the previous lessons, I was talking about the frame before is lower than the frame after. Well, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Before we exaggerated that to get that feel by playing around with our keys and making it kind of faking it with only one contact frame. But here we want the two, and the reason why we want the two is because if you just had him stretch out up here and then squish down here, it would feel like the ball was anticipating the hit and not actually having the platform or whatever surface it's hitting on be the thing that's causing the compression. In the frame after, when we're dealing with the ball, it bounces off up here and generally pointing in the direction it's going. So again, 1 frame contact, 2 squish, 3 off. This is a general rule of thumb. We will be breaking it at least once or twice within this exercise as well. So let's start blocking that in a little bit. Squish down, starts to rotate, coming off. So if you think of the bottom of the ball as almost like a foot, and this is the head, head's going to jump towards where he's going, level out up top, and stretch coming back down. Again, pointing where he came from, landing with his feet. Normally I wouldn't be laying this in so early, but I wanted to demonstrate this quickly. So I'm going to lay this in for this whole track right through here until we get off, until he starts to jump off, and then I'm going to go through and start putting in all the rest of my key poses. Alright, I feel right now this pause is not long enough, so set a few more frames. Feels better. Alright, so we are now kind of putting the squash and stretch through this, so the ball feels like he's propelling himself through the scene. Now let's go ahead and block in the rest of this without squash and stretch, and we'll put in squash and stretch after the fact. So I'm going to just go in and block in the rest according to my little chart here. When we're moving the two objects together, we don't have constraints in this setup, so we are going to basically muscle through it, and there is no real trick to it. It is classic 2D animator style. Now we want him to jump away as this thing throws him up off of it. And so since we've come down here, he's coming in at speed. I'm going to stretch him out here. Now we're shooting out of here. Let's get the middle point, apex, and then we're going to squish them up against this thing because we're coming in at speed all the way through here. So from this point on, I'm going to try and finish this up by bouncing this into this bowl area. This part gets kind of difficult and tedious. We're going to probably not do the squash and stretch as much as I have it drawn out here because it'll just look like it sticks to the bowl. So we're going to have also deal with a lot of micro bounces once we get down into this area, because if you've ever bounced a ball inside a bowl or seen a bouncy ball come to rest in kind of a bowl area, there's a lot of little micro bounces that happen, and you don't get a lot of rolling that happens towards the end. first off, the very next frame is our nice big stretch into this bowl area. Alright, like I said, here comes the painful part, which is the tiny little micro bounces in here. And there's no getting around it except just setting lots and lots and lots of keys. Alright, so now that we've got a rough block all the way through, let's go back and adjust a few timing issues. One of which is this ramp. Feels like he goes a little too slow through there, and I kind of anticipated that early on. So let's go in. Right now we have him in there for 4 frames, and we're going to take that down to 2. feels better. The other part is we have 3 frames here. Let's take those to 2. Alright. So that is our rough blocking pass. Let's move on to overblock. Okay, so now with the overblock, we're going to utilize tween machine quite heavily, and these are my main key poses. There's a lot of them. The animation's pretty long. We're up to 310 frames or so. So what I'm going to do though, because this is where I want to basically keep, I'm going to go under options and turn on special tick color, and that will denote any key I'm set with this at this point in time. We'll turn it green down here, which I'll then know if I need to retime or I need to delete something or whatever the case. Those are the keys I can delete fairly easily without ruining what I've done. So our first section will be this big bounce here. Now, I'm not going to rely on tween machine. I'm just going to use it as a guide. I will be adjusting the keys as I go within it. And again, I'm going to be trying to do these on 2s and 4s as much as possible. Right now this section feels a little bit too long, so we're going to try and retime it a little bit here. Don't forget to grab this guy when we start retiming the middle portion. Alright, that feels a lot better. Right through this section we want a little bit more hang time, so I'm going to take the Y translation and move it up so it effectively makes them hang in the air a little bit longer. Alright, so it's effectively our overblocking. Tween machine makes it very easy. As you can see, anything in green is tween machine. And I didn't really need to set a whole lot this time around because I kind of blocked it in a lot to begin with. So now we're going to move on to spline. And once we get the spline done, we will then finish up with our rotations. First thing, if we go into spline, if you're in my 2012, maybe it's 2011 or later, you can turn it to auto. If you're in 2011 or prior, or maybe just prior to 2011, just turn it to spline. We're going to select our ball. And we're going to hit spline. Let's see what happened. Not too bad. Everything just feels a little soft though. And I did forget to spline this guy. And the one thing I'm noticing is this little squish here. I want like maybe one more frame going on because we only have one frame of squish. So let's give it 2. First thing, we're going to go and make sure all our tangents are how we want them for our impacts and apexes. Let's go ahead and turn on buffer curves. It's one of my favorite tools. It allows you to see where you've been in your graph editor, effectively ghosting the curves you currently have. Now we don't want to ignore our Z translation. We want to edit these as we go along as well. We want, in this particular animation, the ball to be leaving at speed, which means effectively he does not slow in. He leaves already starting at a speed, which means we're going to change this tangent to linear on the out. And he's also going to be coming in at speed, which means he's not going to be slowing in either. So leaving at speed, coming in at speed. Now that last bounce feels like it's a little too floaty, a little too many keyframes. So I'm going to reduce the amount he bounces in the air, taking the Z translation down a little bit. And then I need to reduce the amount of time he's in the air, so we're going to take it to a 1 frame bounce. Now I need to select everything in the scene that's going to be affected after, that I've animated that's going to be affected after that point in time, and then I can move all of the keyframes together to effectively edit that 1 keyframe, or those 2 keyframes. Once again, my little frame selected button doesn't want to respond anymore, so I'll be zooming in and out an awful lot from this point forward. I'm just going to go ahead and clean up most of these curves here and hopefully get this in a state that is ready for rotation. I'm just going to go through the same process that I did before with the other two exercises, but this is just going to be much more, it's going to be much longer and much more in depth. A lot more going on in this one. Alright, now these two sets of bounces are feeling a little too even, so I'm going to add one more little micro bounce on his backup anticipation prior to the big run up to the jump off. So right now this jump feels way too soft coming in. Takes too many frames, so we need to speed this guy up. So as I go through here, I'm basically removing any unnecessary keys, cleaning things up. As you can notice, I'm removing a lot of these intermittent keys in between because nothing shouldn't be changing speed in the middle of its jump in terms of its translation in the Z. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to get this last little bit to feel right, and as you can see from my ghosted curves, the buffer curves, I'm tearing it apart a little bit to get this ending to feel right. My blocking wasn't perfect, so I'm going back in and reworking until it does feel right. We need to get this portion completed before I can actually move on to rotations. Well, I'm going to move on to rotations. This ending point isn't quite perfect, but it'll do for this tutorial. So I want this thing rotating it rotating clockwise all the way through this jump until this point right here. This is where friction takes over and it starts rotating the other way. So we can get rid of all these keys and we're going to have it rotate in one direction. From this point on, I don't really need to worry about rotating much until I get down into here where it starts to settle, because I'm already rotating it back and forth. We are just about done with this. One thing that feels a little weird is, other than the fact that it comes to rest a little too soon here, but kind of running out of time and we need to wrap this up, is that it spends a little too much time right here, a little too much. So let's just take our ball and grab that, and let's go fix it. Let's take that out. Let's take that out. And let's take that out. Let's total 4 frames gone. How's it play? So that is how you do a ball squash and stretch. That's also a character. If you notice, once he comes off of this diving board little thing, he basically just goes in straight to back to ball physics. He's not a character anymore. The whole point of this exercise is to start with a character, end in a ball, or start with a ball, end in a character. Well, that's how you animate a bouncing ball through the obstacle course, using squash and stretch and adding a little character. Hope you guys got a lot out of this one because it was pretty long. I'll see you guys in class.